Greetings and welcome to Dougy Dialogues. I'm Dr. Monique Mitchell, and we're webcasting from Dougy Center in Portland, Oregon. Dougy Center, the first childhood bereavement center in the United States, is recognized as an international leader in the childhood bereavement field for supporting children and families who are grieving. In these 30-minute discussions, Dougy Center staff explore language, trends, research, theories, and other relevant topics related to death, dying, loss, and grief. Our intention is to continue to shape the professional dialogue in the field, and we hope to spark some thought provoking conversations along the way. Dougy Dialogues are primarily intended for an audience of professionals working to support children and families who are grieving. If you're looking for lived experience or support for your own grief, head on over to our Dougy Center podcast, Grief Out Loud, on iTunes or your favorite listening platform. Thanks so much for joining us, and welcome to Dougy Dialogues.
Hi, Linda.
Hey, happy to be here today.
Yeah, it's good to talk with you. I thought before we kind of jump into our conversation, it might be fun to just think about some of the common misconceptions people have, kind of development and program teams have when they're kind of thinking about each other, and maybe when things aren't going so awesome. Just some of those things that we tend to fall back on and think about the other side.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think one of the things that people really, have all different kinds of feelings about is death and grief. The other thing that people have lots of different feelings about is money and asking people for it.
Yes.
So, I think that there can be misconceptions that money is the only thing that development cares about, and that we don't have a lot of um, investment in the program, and providing those services. And also that we just plan parties and drink wine with rich people. That's a myth
Thing,
that
right?
I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Program.
I mean, I think on the same side, right? That like program people don't understand what needs to happen to fund a nonprofit, or I think lots of times, like, I mean, we can kind of talk about this, but just sharing family stories can be a really powerful tool to share kind of what we're doing. But on the program side, that like maybe program is too protective of those stories, or doesn't want to share, or doesn't want to give that information up, which we can talk through kind of all the things behind that. But I think those are some of the
I think that's a really big one, and that's one that that comes up. I think for anyone, when we're just trying to work really well together, that there can be a misconception that development people want the most traumatic or saddest story that we have, or want access to a family before they might be ready to share their story. And I think that's when it's so important to have a good relationship with your program staff and with the program director in particular, and a real deep understanding of the program and confidentiality, and our respect for families and their stories, so that we can understand, the person with the most recent, saddest, traumatic story, that family probably doesn't want to share it. Or they may want to share it, but that's really not development's call to make. And we don't want to do anything that would re-traumatize or look exploitive in any way. We want to share the goodness of the program.
Yeah, I always just so appreciate when we're collaborating and thinking about families, that you and I and kind of our teams are really able to just kind of defer to each other's expertise. So when development is looking for a family, you come to me and say, can you brainstorm, like, who might be ready, who is it appropriate to ask, like give me some ideas from a program perspective of really thinking about that family. And then we are, really thoughtful and are able to often kind of approach that family together and just kind of bridging of like, how will we best support this family,
Yeah.
if and when they're ready to share.
Yeah. And I think we've had some really amazing families who were willing to share their stories. And I think for development, folks like me, it's really important to know what an honor that is. To have a family that would want to step in front of our supporters and really share the impact of the Dougy Center, but also what brought them to Dougy Center.
Yeah, and I think it's really in their kind of grief process. It can be a really
Hmm.
powerful moment.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We've seen some really, really amazing stories come out that way.
Yeah.
So I mean, I just think it's really important across the board for us to work together and consciously do that, collaborate together, um, and to really, I mean, the misconceptions kind of illustrate how we can have more empathy for each other's expertise and challenges and successes, and really at the Dougy Center, we try to celebrate them together. We all, program wants to celebrate development success, and development, of course, wants to celebrate the program's success, because then we get to go share it with the world and help us raise money to do more.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is really important to kind of embrace those successes, and then also just kind of like have humility, I guess, for each other.
Hmm.
Really, like, we all have really challenging jobs. Like,
Yeah.
I think we probably kind of think each other's roles are nearly impossible, right? Because that's
Hmm.
like, I don't have the skill set to, raise $1 million, and
Yeah,
I'm guessing you don't necessarily have the skill set to run a program.
I don't.
Just kind of, thinking about where all of our skills lie, and then
Hmm.
understanding that like we have big tasks to accomplish, and that we can do that so much better in working as a team.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think about all of the relationships that we hold as well. Thinking back to we're talking about families and who might want to share their story. And I'm always amazed at program staff's ability to hold all of those relationships, and with volunteers, and then be willing to develop relationships with our supporters as well. People usually come to supporting this work because they have an experience that leads them to thinking, I wish I had Dougy Center when I was a kid, that kind of thing.
Right.
And development for me, in my experience, well, we hear those stories too. It's you may start talking to someone who is a potential donor, but you will listen and hear their grief story. And it's really important for me to pick up on Dougy Center's model and reflective listening, those pieces that help me when there's someone who's telling me their story, which may be, still very emotional for them.
Yeah.
So I learn a lot from program. That's one of the reasons. That's one of the ways I stay humble, and how I appreciate you all so much.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you.
Hmm.
I know you had mentioned a little bit ago, just kind of talking about the conscious collaboration that we do with each other. And I
Hmm.
really think that that is kind of a great like tool that we use just
Hmm.
in kind of making sure we're, walking the path together, and kind of knowing what each department is doing. It makes things smoother. I know
Hmm.
one of the ways we do that is we kind of have those like quarterly check-in meetings where we're talking
Yeah.
about just planning. So kind of made like grants that are coming up, and you're asking me,
Hmm.
what are program goals? What are you looking for?
Hmm.
What's realistic? And just
Yeah.
kind of checking in on those things.
Yeah. It's really important with grants in particular, because grants will sometimes take 6 to 8 months to even be in review. And knowing that, it's important that the grant is going to be useful and relevant 6 to 8 months down the line. And the quarterly meetings, I think, really help me to stay on top of new developments in programs work, new resources that might be of interest to major donors. A lot of the COVID-19 resources that we have been just churning out, I share them with donors all the time because I want them to see how relevant we are in this particular time period during the pandemic. So I think, if there's any advice, like at least having that kind of quarterly check-in and the ability to double check participant numbers and messaging and things like that with programs so that it resonates with our supporters, but also resonates with the participants and isn't something that's going to turn them off.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, it's just reassuring to me to know that like the ideas that we have moving forward, that, there are thoughts on funding those. And, obviously every grant we apply for can't go through, or every, major funding source, but that at least that's kind of out there, and I can trust that you're looking and pursuing. And then also when you write something that you're checking in with me. It's not like, oh, surprise, I wrote for you to do this. I don't want to do that. So just
Exactly.
that constant close communication and trust with each other, I think makes it so much easier just to kind of get all of our jobs done.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, it doesn't happen at Dougy Center, but I can only imagine having some grant written for your program and then realizing that there's a 12-step evaluation process that the development folks made up, or thought we could do, or even leadership thought we could do, but without conscious collaboration, programs left to implement it. And you really are the expert on evaluation, for example. So why not start there? Start with you. How can we evaluate this particular project or grant funded project?
Yeah.
So that we can report on it when we, luckily, hopefully get the money and
right.
do the work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of always try to, I don't know, keep development in mind, I guess, if I'm working with a family and I hear a story that I think will be particularly impactful. Of course, kind of doing all due diligence to make sure that it's okay to share tidbits and things like that, changing names, all of the kind of technical things, but also thinking like, wow, this is a powerful story that can really illustrate the impact of our services. Like, I should let somebody else know about this. I think actually I could probably do a little bit better of doing that on a day-to-day basis, but really just kind of always having that in the back of my mind. That the experiences that I have with kids and families every day, are impactful. And of course we want to do that in a really responsible way.
Yeah. Yeah. And my whole team just really appreciates being able to hear those tidbits, and know that we can potentially use them if we need to, or find families in particular when we have a need to really showcase the story, but also to have a deeper understanding about how the program works, about the impact of the program, just on that anecdotal level. A lot of funders and major donors, they want to hear stories like that, and if we can change the names and still share that impact, it can be really powerful in a one-on-one meeting or in a written report, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, Alysha, I'm curious. So we have like an annual calendar of fundraising. We go through our different activities, and sometimes pandemic comes along and we switch them all to virtual. I'm wondering, what's one example of something you think your program team really likes to do to help out the development team on an annual basis? Like, what's something that
probably
you all really like?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I think of course, I guess would be our reflection benefit. So, really thinking about kind of our major event of the year, which of course is, uh, when I first think of it, of course, that lies in development. You are doing the
Mm-hmm.
event planning, you are doing that event, but there's so many cool ways that you incorporate the entire staff. And
Yeah.
the program team is able to help out in like, um, in getting a family just to share their
Mm-hmm.
story. They're able to help out in, doing like, I don't, some people might not think they're fun. I think they're fun tasks of like helping to build the baskets and
Mm-hmm.
actually hands-on, like physical, all hands are on deck for this task. And it
Mm-hmm.
just is like a nice opportunity for the entire team to come together and pitch in. So I think that's really fun, something I look forward to every year. Of course, we're
Yeah.
virtual this year, but we will be back in actually having all hands on deck physically soon.
Yeah. Yeah. We're on virtual on May 7th, so it's coming up really fast. So we're definitely thinking about that and ways that program folks can lend a hand even if it's behind a keyboard
Yeah,
for this year. I love that a lot of our development team has actually volunteered and as a facilitator in a grief group.
yeah,
Um, that opportunity that we don't place any restrictions on that. It's a different skill, so you're absolutely welcome to volunteer. It's really wonderful, and we learn again just so much more about the program, and a lot more about our coworkers and what they go through in their daily work, of sitting and making space for grieving kids and teens and young adults and their families. So I think that's a really, really wonderful thing that the Dougy Center offers the fundraising and administrative folks too.
yeah, absolutely. I think, that's maybe one of the easiest ways to kind of truly get in touch with, what we're offering and doing is really being a part of
Mhm.
it without having to have a clinical background. But
Right.
coming into that volunteer role and getting some of that exposure, I think
Hmm.
it's really cool that that exists as well.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I think it's important for, at least I'm sure you probably agree, Alicia, is that we both, in our humility and our conscious collaboration, I think program teams and development teams, leadership teams, just really need to be conscious of capacity and
Yeah,
bandwidth. And I can come up with like the greatest, coolest fundraising campaign idea in the world, and we're going to do it in 3 weeks, and propose that. But if I'm not aware of what your bandwidth is, where you are in like the cycle of groups, if I don't really know, how groups are working, biweekly and stuff like that, then then I'm liable to to essentially like maybe make you mad or or frustrate program
right.
folks um, with my ideas that just mean more work.
Yeah,
So really important to present ideas in a way that allow for us all to have the capacity and bandwidth to um, to execute them. And I mean, I would say I don't on the same end for program coming to development and saying, we just need $100,000 right now, go get
right. Can you just write a grant for that, Linda?
it. I can, but do you want to wait 6 to 8 months to have it? And maybe you can have it, and maybe you'll get 70% of it. So sharing those things, it can be, just collegial um, with one another, as if you have program folks who don't know as much about development, or development folks that haven't been as close to a program
Yeah.
as our teams might be, because I think most children's bereavement centers are pretty small staff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think there is kind of a cyclical nature of both of our departments when kind of
Hmm.
the busy season is happening, quote unquote, or, times
Hmm.
we're able to kind of have a little more flexibility in our schedule or not. And so just kind of really trying to kind of stay in tune with just kind of where others are, and knowing that their patterns of busyness may not necessarily match yours. So really just trying to tune into that is really important.
Yeah. Well, it all kind of comes down to getting each other and each other's work and communicating, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Communicating and trusting each other, and really just, I mean, I think, you know, we talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but just really kind of sharing in that, in the celebration, I think is a really awesome way that we're good at celebrating each other's success, supporting each other's, you know, a little bit of steps, but just kind of being there to be on that full team together and recognizing that everyone has a really vital role. Has been
I wouldn't be here without you. You wouldn't probably be here without me. So, yeah. Well, it's been great talking with you. I hope this is helpful for our folks out there.
Yeah, absolutely. You too. Thanks so much, Linda.
Thanks, Alysha. Bye.
Bye.